Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Friday, the 27th of February, 2026, and I am very excited to welcome Sarah Marcotte and Katherine Scott to the People in Fundraising Weekly Nonprofit Podcast. And you both have some very exciting news that we'd love to dive into as part of our conversation today, pretty much the biggest substance of our conversation. And I don't want to bury the lead, so if I can quickly just share my screen and you can see that you are the co-authors of this book, From the Ground Up, Prospect Research for Nonprofits. So congratulations to the both of you for bringing this book to light. I'm excited to have you both today share kind of the soup to nuts of its development, its publication, and how you want to get the word out to a global audience about this book. So very exciting news for the both of you. You can find it on Amazon. Please disregard the fact that this is showing my parents' address in Massachusetts in the background. But yeah, I really appreciate voices like yours who, particularly a non-US perspective on fundraising and specifically within prospect development, prospect research. So I would love to give you as much time today as you'd like to share with our audience about this book. Before we get to that point, and goodness, I've already spoken quite enough, I'd love for the both of you to introduce yourselves to our audience by your title, by your employer, where you're joining us, and then we'll get into our questions.
Certainly, I will step up, go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Marcotte. My pronouns are she, her. I am currently the Senior Specialist Data Steward at Sick Kids Foundation in Toronto. And Katherine, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katherine Scott, also she, her, or L. I'm bilingual. I'm the Director of Prospect Management and Research at the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation, which is a leading cancer research center. We're supporting the leading cancer research center in Canada. And I work right across the street from Sarah. I've been working in prospect development for a long time, and Sarah's been a colleague who's worked with me along the way. So we're delighted to be here together today.
Oh, good on you for giving a shout out to your organization. I would be remiss if I did not say that Sick Kids our foundation supports the Hospital for Sick Children, which is the #1 children's hospital in the world for 2025.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, you both work at premier nonprofit organizations in your field. That's awesome. And I have a first question that I ask every guest about how they entered the field and where they are now. So please, if you want to share more about your employers in that part of the conversation, I'd welcome that as well. For people who are just listening to my podcast, thank you. I'm wearing a red shirt with white piping in honor of Canada and Sarah and Katherine joining from Canada today. So let's stick to that format of having Sarah talk first and then Katherine. If you could please both take a few minutes to share with our audience how you entered prospect research in particular, the fundraising profession in general, and we'll give you, maybe 5 minutes each to talk about that, and then we'll get into your book.
Sounds great. Okay, so for myself, I think what my career journey, it's probably not too different from many people's career journeys in fundraising, especially prospect research. I kind of fell into it. It was right after I had graduated my undergraduate degree at McGill University. I was hired by the research team there to support the quiet phase of their campaign. That was the campaign that, I can't remember quite when it closed, but it was at the time quite groundbreaking, $750 million, prospects around the world. So it was a very, very intense education, as you can imagine. So I spent a year there learning sort of the ins and outs of prospect research from just a really wonderful boss and mentor, Paloma Gonzalez. She's currently at Concordia. And then because I was surrounded by these fantastic researchers, I thought this is a kind of interesting profession and I really like it. But what I'm noticing is that my colleagues all have library degrees. So maybe this is something that I want to check out. And so then I went to Western University, which is over in London, Ontario, and did my library sciences degree. Also fantastic. While I was there, I worked in a public library. So I got a little taste of sort of that front-facing service profession. And then when I was graduating, I was looking for a job, and lo and behold, there was a job in Toronto at Sick Kids Foundation hiring for a prospect researcher. And I thought, you know what, I could do that. And we kind of want to move to Toronto after going to do the master's degree, because Toronto is, it's a pretty big place. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Sure.
And then I managed to get the job. I worked with another fantastic researcher, human being, Barb Fanning. She's actually one of the founders of APRA Canada, which is the Canadian arm of APRA International. And I believe that she served on the board of APRA International. I might be wrong about that, but she did chair the conference that was in 2003 that was here in Toronto. So just obviously huge amounts of learning from her. And then, so I spent quite a long piece of time at Sick Kids as a prospect researcher. I moved to Canadian Red Cross to manage the research team there. Then moved to Weitzman Canada, managed the research team there. And then lo and behold, I have ended back up at Sick Kids Foundation, but in a slightly different role, which is on the CRM team, overseeing some of their data governance initiatives. So had a little bit of a walkabout about Toronto, and then came back to Sick Kids Foundation, and it's such a pleasure to be back with such a great team.
That's wonderful. I'm sure it has evolved in the time from when you first were there to now.
It has.
Awesome. Very cool. Nothing like a homecoming.
Yes, I know how to work the coffee machines.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for that career overview of yours, and we'll turn to Katherine.
So thanks. Similar to Sarah, I don't think any of us woke up one day and dreamed of being prospect researchers when we grew up. I certainly did not know that this profession existed. And well, I'm really glad that I discovered it now. So my journey was a little bit of falling into it as well. I was really interested in international development work. I did my master's degree at the University of Guelph in political science and international development. I worked in the field in Tanzania. I traveled a little bit and I was really excited to do that. But I graduated in 2008 and there really weren't any jobs. And I had a child and I had to figure something out pretty quickly as to how I was going to move forward over the next little while. And so I was working, because I speak French, I was able to get a job answering phones at Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, in the Canadian office. And just prior to that, I worked at a small human rights organization, working on freedom of expression writing and doing some editing and translating. That really got my foot in the door in the nonprofit space. And then in 2010, when I was working at Doctors Without Borders, Haiti was devastated by a horrific earthquake, a natural disaster. Mm-hmm. And that really changed fundraising at MSF, among many other things. But in the fundraising world, it had a huge impact. And the fundraising team changed as well. And there was a clear need for someone who could work in prospect research and grant writing and just general writing. And because I had the language skills and I had the MSF chops and the international development background and a lot of passion, I did that for a long while. And so for the prospect research component, I was like, geez, I better figure out what this is and what I'm supposed to do. And so I joined APRA Canada right away. I had a mentor. She was fantastic. Jackie Wyatt over at Covenant House now. She just showed me the ropes, like typical APRA community experience. Everyone is so collaborative and helpful and wants you to succeed. And so she really helped me there. So I was able to develop a full prospect development and research program when I was at MSF. And I'm still involved in the organization. I'm still one of the committees. I'm a member of the association, very proudly so, but I've since moved around a little bit. I've worked for probably 30 organizations, maybe even 40 by now. I haven't done a count recently. I did a lot of freelancing for a long while, which allowed me to work with lots of international organizations, just doing fantastic work, but who wouldn't normally have a full-time prospect researcher. So I was able to do a lot of contract work. And then one of my contracts ended up being at the Princess Margaret Cancer Foundation. Then I went around and worked at the Canadian Red Cross, managed the research team there, started up the research function, and I worked at Toronto Metropolitan University, which used to be known as Ryerson University. It's a lovely polytechnical school in central Toronto, where I will be a parent as of next year because my eldest child is going to be attending. So I was able to move around, and then at full circle moment, this opportunity came up at the Princess Margaret, where I'm working now, and I couldn't be more delighted to be back. It's a wonderful crew. It's a wonderful group of people, and I think we're going to have some really exciting things in cancer over that will have a global impact. So that's how I ended up here. Somewhere along the line, I also noticed that a lot of people have master's degree in library science. So I went back and did that part-time. That was a really wonderful experience. I got to work as a virtual reference librarian while I was there a little bit. So I got to have that sort of library front-facing role. But I find that degree was extremely useful for me in this role, although I know it's not as direct a line anymore as maybe it used to be. And then also somewhere along the way, I served 2 terms as president of APRA Canada for that chapter, and Sarah worked on the board with me, and I met some wonderful people that way. And I think we really got to make an impact on the profession. So that's where we are. And now it feels like I just started yesterday, but somehow it's been nearly 20 years, and I don't know how that happened.
Here we are. And I would say that all along the sort of the career path, what I think is really marvelous about the profession, I'd say in nonprofit, but also especially in prospect research, the people are so kind, they're so supportive, they're so collaborative, they are so willing to give their time and effort to help you out. I can't really say how it is in other professions, but I know that I can, reach out on LinkedIn, pick up the phone, give somebody that I have never met in person a call, and they will take the time out of their day to help me with my problem, to talk me through some of the things that I've been banging my head against the wall with. So I'd say any success that I've had in my career is definitely in a large part because of the support network that sort of surrounds you.
That's beautifully put, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that.
And certainly, not only are they the most supportive people, some prospect researchers are also some of the most interesting people. I have met people who are dedicated Renaissance Fair participants, writers, athletes, musicians, jazz trombonist was one of them, quite dedicated D&D players. There's all manner of interesting people who work in this field.
Yes,
True.
that is true as well. And yeah, I thank you both for taking the time to talk about your careers. I find it fascinating. You both have library science degrees. You have come full circle, as Katherine said, going back to returning to your previous employers, and you work across the street from each other.
We do.
We do.
They can actually see our offices from each other. I can stand on our balcony and sort of wave.
Yeah.
A lot of the really premier hospitals in Toronto are actually they all sort of are on universities. So they sort of call it University Row because we have the Hospital for Sick Children. We have Sinai Health with Toronto Rehab, Princess Margaret Cancer, and then Toronto General, just all in a row.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that you both have all those commonalities. And just another follow-up, I'm currently on the board of APRA International. I want to be clear that APRA does not sponsor or endorse my podcast, but I just want to say personally, thank you both for investing in APRA International on the ground with APRA Canada, and for the time that you have given to professionals in that chapter and to the chapter itself. So
Thank you.
keep it up, because we certainly need our volunteers and appreciate their work.
Recognizing that this is not sponsored or affiliated with APRA in any way, I still want to give a big shout out to the organization, because, like I said, having that that support network, especially through APRA Canada, APRA International, the conferences, has just been such a great support as I learned and developed and grew my career. So yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
Big shout out.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, with that background, and I appreciate your time, both of you, to share what you have so far. Let's now enthusiastically pivot to your book. Again, the title is From the Ground Up, Prospect Research for Nonprofits. And I would love to just kind of open the clock to whatever you'd like to share with our audience. And we can start with Katherine, then go to Sarah, however you want to do it. Yeah. How you developed the idea for this book, what the writing process was like, and then once it's been published, where do you go from here in terms of taking it on the road? And I'm just very excited to hear that part of it.
Yeah, I think actually Katherine should start us off, just because the way that the book sort of sparked into being, it was a conversation at a conference.
Yes.
All right.
So yeah, happy to. So we actually outlined this story in the book for anyone who's really interested in some of the details. I was attending the AFP Icon Conference in New Orleans a few years ago. By the way, New Orleans, fantastic place to visit, one of my favorite places in the U.S. So I was having a conversation like you do when you're at a conference with a longtime friend and colleague of mine, Brock Warner, who's a consultant up here in Ontario, and is Broccoli Consulting, and has worked for a number of international organizations. And he and I were starting to talk about what his plans were. He'd written From the Ground Up, Digital Fundraising, which was a wonderful book and is really still a useful handbook for a number of organizations trying to get the basics right in digital fundraising. And he shared with me that he always sort of envisioned this book as the beginning of a series, but didn't really want to write all the rest of the books. And so I thought, this is true. And I could have used a From the Ground Up prospect research when I started out. And so, a few conversations, a few drinks later, and one night I committed to writing a book, and then quickly realized maybe I was a bit out of my depth. So I texted Sarah from New Orleans from my hotel room, and I sketched out an outline, and I said, what do you think of this? Do you want to write this with me? And it was kind of a rhetorical question. It wasn't really a yes or no. She knew it. And she knew it. And there was no one else but Sarah that I would have chosen, because we'd done presentations together. We collaborated together. We have like sort of similar career, not pathways, but certainly levels of maturity or number of years, if you want to put it that way. We had some shared perspectives and shared experiences, as well as some diverse experiences that we could weave together into a book. Now, I'm pretty great at starting off projects, but the follow through is not where my strength is. But luckily, Sarah is really good at it. So
Luckily,
Sarah, do you want to talk about how we actually finished?
Luckily, I will follow up on things. That is, I'm sure that all of my colleagues at Sick Kids, they hate to see me coming, because they know that I'm going to follow up and ask them where we're at with the thing that we were talking about last month. Like, oh, here's a blast from the past. So as Katherine said, like, really, I think it's kind of funny to talk about, because people say, oh, you wrote a book, it must have been so hard, it must have been so long. And I say, well, we started with a bullet list. Katherine did a bullet list, and we just added in topics, and then we started writing about the topics.
Okay.
And of course, that does sound very facile to say, oh, and then you just put words one after the other on a page, and then you write a book. So easy. But I think because there was a little bit of structure already, and that we knew sort of the beats that we wanted to hit, and we knew the tone that we wanted to set, which was, it's from the ground up. It is aimed to be a bit of a primer for people who are starting out, but it also I mean, we go into pretty much everything. We thought this is our book. We can do what we want with it. So we just wrote everything that we wanted someone to tell us.
Okay.
And we're both oldest sisters. So it was a very, I'm going to take you under my wing. And I just want to tell you, here's the straight talk. Here's our experience. Pick out the things that resonate with you. And so I think, what was it? I mean, it was a really great creative outlet as well. Because, in our profession, you end up doing, I don't want to say repetitive work, but it can be quite repetitive because, you do your profiles, you do your prospecting, there's not always the ability to, flex a little bit of creativity, share your knowledge, write about the things that you're interested in. So, I mean, that made it so much fun. Writing it with Katherine was so much fun. It gave us a great excuse to be able to hang out. And so, as Katherine will attest, I just keep picking away. I'd tag her in the shared document and say, "Can you review this?" We just sort of chipped away at it over weekends, evenings. We'd have writing retreats, and then I think it was about 2 years start to finish to get a full draft.
Okay.
Is that correct, Katherine?
Yes, that was about it.
Because then we had, we're very blessed to be in a circle of friends who are also quite accomplished creatively. So we were able to ask one of our friends in our book club to do an edit of it because she has that kind of experience. I was able to rope in a couple colleagues. So we had a prospect researcher read through it for tone and to make sure that we were hitting the right notes. We had a fundraiser sensitivity reader who was able to go through and make sure that we weren't being too mean. So we cleaned it up a little bit to make sure that that we weren't being totally unfair. We had Catherine's mom actually copy edited it for us, which was great. And then, of course, Rock gave the final run through and did a really wonderful introduction and has just been such an incredible support and publishing partner. So
that there are so many fascinating pieces so far. You mentioned going on these writing retreats and the fundraising sensitivity. Were there times now you've mentioned you have a similar circle of friends and like the similarities keep adding up here, Katherine and Sarah. I'm wondering, were there topics or parts of the process where you diverged in your viewpoint, or you were like, okay, well, I really want to talk about this, but I don't feel super wedded to it. So if you feel differently and you can make a persuasive argument, why not? Then I'm okay. Were there things like that came up as well, kind of like the Lennon McCartney songwriting dynamic?
Yes, we are the Lennon McCartney of prospect research writing.
I'll put that in my LinkedIn bio now.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know. I feel like we were pretty closely aligned on the topics. I know we cut one chapter just because it was going to be too much work. And I'm sure the book would have been richer for it because we thought it would be really nice to have to just gather some experts in the field, some people who are a little bit later on in their careers who could offer some really the interesting and the advice, the things that they had learned. And then it was just going to take a very long time to put that together. It was not on the timeline that we wanted to follow.
Okay.
Plus, we ended up at 430 pages. I don't think that anyone wants to have a much longer book.
All of that may be true, but I'm sensing a sequel here.
Oh gosh.
Commit either of you to that, but that would be fascinating.
It would be fascinating. I would love to see it.
But I think that there were a few parts there where we didn't disagree, but we had different maybe approaches or what would like to do or what we would do in a certain situation. But overall, it's quite top level. It doesn't get in too much into the weeds on, should you write this way, or how do you cite your sources on
Yeah.
On your profile.
If we were doing it that way, we would have been fighting a lot. So I'm glad we didn't do that.
Yeah. So much like I feel like my relationship with my spouse, we can disagree on the minor.
There we go.
There we go. You were mentioning, Katherine, your spouse, and Sarah and I were eager to hear the rest of that sentence. I think there's a lag on your...
cut out.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, much like with my spouse, we might disagree on very minor things, but we are aligned on values. So I think reading this book with Sarah, we were quite aligned on what the important topics were that we wanted to cover and what the tone would be. So that made it really easy. It was such a pleasure. I couldn't imagine reading with anyone else with Sarah. And we had so much fun. We on our writing retreats, we were with some writers who were working on some fiction pieces that were really interesting. And I hadn't really ever imagined myself as a writer. I'm an avid reader, but it was just such a pleasure to work through that process.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
That's really cool. I mean, I like hearing the backstory of your collaboration on this. I wondered if you could kind of give some high level of what the topics may be. You don't have to go through all of them, but just for people that are interested in buying your book, using it in their shops, what are some of, there's my pen, what are some of the topics that you really dive into from the ground up, please?
Well, I mean, so it's sort of sectioned into, I think we ended up with 4 sections, I believe. And the first section is really about when you're starting out in the profession. So like really super basic when you are just a new baby researcher or someone who's interested, like maybe you're not totally new to the working world, but you are new to nonprofits. So we try to start really basically. We have we provide like an introduction to like what is this world of nonprofits? What are you probably going to encounter as a prospect researcher? Where you can maybe look for jobs. There's a little bit of career coaching to say, here's how you can put together your resume. Here's how you can put together your LinkedIn. We do a fairly in-depth review of generally what you can expect in your day-to-day as prospect researcher. So, the prospect identification, doing the research profiles, the kind of data management that you're responsible for, what kind of resources you can expect to have access to or might be interested in having. And then we have this is my favorite section, is the other duties as assigned. And so things that are maybe not in your job description, but you do have to oversee. So things like knowledge management and due diligence, and a special chapter about campaigns, which I think upon reflection, my CDO at Sick Kids, he's a big booster of the book. He's been such a wonderful support, but he came to me, goes, I'm halfway through it. Do you really think of fundraisers that way? It's like I told him about our sensitivity reader. He goes, oh. This is
I really don't think we were mean.
I don't think we were mean. And then I was reading the campaign chapter. I'm like, well, if you feel called out by this, then I'm sorry.
That's interesting. Sorry, Katherine, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the structure of each of the sections ends with each chapter has a too long didn't read summary. And while it is really geared for new people, I think it's good for anyone at any level who's working with prospect researchers or hiring a prospect researcher to really get a sense of where this fits into the greater fundraising picture, because it's a niche profession. Let's be honest. There are a lot of us, and we can't expect everyone to understand. So we try to keep it very plain language. And then we have some sort of side panels throughout the book as well about specific experiences that we've each had. Sort of humanize us and maybe validate some people's experience.
I love that.
Yeah, the reviews that I've heard quite early on from some researchers who have read it, they say it's very validating.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. So please tell us where people can find the book, in what format, and then are you taking it out on the road virtually or at upcoming conferences and things like that?
Yeah, so right now it is available on Amazon. It is a physical copy, but we are hoping, fingers crossed, to get the ebook available also on Amazon. And that should hopefully maybe in March, just that we have to. This is one of those things that our wonderful partner in publishing, Brock, is taking care of for us. So huge props to Brock. So hopefully that will be available soon. And then it's been interesting. We obviously have not published a book before, so we've sort of been making it up as we go along, and mostly trying to take advantage of things that we've already been doing or already planning to do to then boost the book. Katherine, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say to that. We are going to be speaking at N10 NTC conference in Detroit next month, and obviously we'll give the book a little bit of props there, but and then we'll be co-hosting a social event for AFP Toronto at the end of March.
Cool.
After that,
well, one of our vendor partners has offered to host a book launch for us.
Great.
And it's, all our colleagues have been so wonderful, but because
They
it's
have
such a
been.
small community, the word spreads pretty quickly. We had a little in-person book launch. I mean, we still have full-time jobs and we have families. We can't dedicate ourselves entirely to taking the show on the road. That being said, if Netflix is ready to option Prospect ground up, we can talk. But we're just really enjoying the process of engaging with our colleagues. So with that being said, anyone who has a podcast or would like to invite us to speak about it or to talk or coach, we're always open and we're always available.
Yep. Oh, we love talking.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have a few podcast hosts and I'm happy to connect you with to help spread the word.
Thank you.
We would love that. Thank you so much.
My
See, this is the community. This is the community. I love it.
It totally is. Yes. And I totally get you with the family and the day job. My wife and I have 4 kids, and so I do all the podcast stuff like early morning when they're still sleeping in on Saturday and Sunday mornings. So
good for you.
So thank you both. That was really fascinating and fun to hear you talk about the writing, the editing process, and taking from the ground up out to the community. And I wish you both much success and visibility with this book. I think it's a really valued contribution to our industry.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. We're going to pivot here, as I always do with guests. It's the people in fundraising focus now. And in the question 3, the content here is based on information that you both have shared on your LinkedIn bios or other online bios, because I'm also a prospect researcher.
Well done.
And I cleared it with both of you. It wasn't too creepy for me to do that. I really like what you have shared on those platforms, just a snippet of who you are in the forefront of your life and careers. So, Katherine, your bio notes that you enjoy plotting your, quote, next travel adventures. And if we can start with you, and then we'll get to Sarah's TBR book pile that will last, quote, beyond your life expectancy. So little teasers there. So Katherine, curious about your travel adventures, and is there a place that you really have wanted to visit that it's still on the top of your bucket list, just haven't been there yet?
Yeah, for sure. I've struggled with wanderlust my entire life. I love travel and meeting people, and that can be travel near or far, local, far flung. I'm up for just about anything. Awesome. My next travel adventure is to the west coast of Canada and Vancouver Island with my immediate family. We're going to have a nice little oceanside retreat. And then later this summer, I'm going to the complete other coast of Canada. One of my favorite places in the world is Western Newfoundland. So I'm looking forward to some hiking there. If anyone can get there, I highly recommend it. Reserve your car well in advance, and be prepared to spend a little bit of money, but it is worth every penny, I assure you. And then when you ask me about places I'd never been, I mean, like I said, I'll go anywhere. I'm always thrilled to meet people and see new things and get out in nature. But one place that is on my mind I've never been is Algeria. It is on my list. I've been told on good authority that it is one of the most beautiful places to really experience the night sky in the Sahara Desert. So that is on my list. I don't know when I'll get there. Again, with full life and busy jobs, I'm grateful. But in the meantime, I'm just delighted I get to live in the city where I do, because I feel like I can explore just through my own city so many different things. Toronto is one of the most diverse cities in the world. It's a nice size. I can get around and experience all kinds of wonderful things in my own backyard as well. So let's not discount that. We don't always need to get on a plane to go somewhere interesting. That being said, if there is an upcoming work opportunity in Algeria to record a podcast and I can take a side trip to the Sahara Desert, I will be the first to sign up.
I'll keep you in mind. Yes. That's really cool. I was at the Toronto APRA conference in 2003. It was my first one, I believe. Yeah.
Wow.
And one day I skipped a session and went on a boat ride in the lake outside Toronto, and the boat operator mentioned that Babe Ruth played some minor league baseball games in Toronto, and that legend says one of his home runs landed in that lake.
Really?
And I'm a huge baseball fan. I'm like, that would be so cool. So yeah, it's a great city.
Although baseball's still a bit sensitive after a World Series loss last season.
Yeah.
Quite devastated.
Yes, I'm an American League fan. My hometown team is the Boston Red Sox. So if they don't make it, I root. Unless it's the Yankees, I root for the American League team in the World Series. And dang it, I was pulling a few guys. Ah. Well, let's go on a happier note.
That's a happier note.
Sarah, so your TBR book pile.
Yes.
I'm curious to hear about that. How long has it been building? How many books generally are there? How do you pick and choose what to draw from that pile?
Oh gosh, it's so I have always been just a huge reader. I love reading. I love the places that you can be taken to in books. I love how you can just be exposed to all sorts of different walks of life and experiences. I think that, like you read enough, it helps you gain empathy, because it just does really open up your mindset to different ways of thinking and being. I am an omnivore when it comes to reading. I will read pretty much anything. Catherine can attest to this. I'm a fast reader, so I can kind of permit myself lots of different things. Honestly, I will pick up things based on what people have suggested. I'm in, I think, 3 different book clubs, so there's always something going on. For my neighborhood book club, we just read A Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. For my work book club, we just read The Names by Florence Knapp. I missed our last book club.
I can't even remember what we read.
Me neither. And our personal life book club, we get a little bit more. We're not quite as prescriptive, just because it is a group of people of a certain age who just maybe don't have the same amount of time and energy for reading long books anymore. There was a time that we were reading Les Miserables, and that time has passed. But yeah, no, it's right now, I would say I have about 10 books on my bedside table. I am still looking to read. I have Neuro Giving by Cherry and Koshi, Rethinking Philanthropy by Vu Lee. Into Vacation by Cory Doctorow. There's another one that I'm very eager to read each of them. That's on the bedside table. Those are the physical books. On my e-reader, I have what do I have out right now? See, I can't even think of it because there are just too many books. And then Toronto Public Library, which is an absolutely fabulous resource. I think it's one of the biggest,
I
like
think
has
it's
the most
second right
branches.
now in North America.
Yeah,
Whoa.
100 branches. But they have a function that you can just make lists of books that you would like to read.
Wow.
But I know that I have 80 books on hold because your top limit is 100. And then I have about 150 on my list.
Oh my.
It's just like, as a researcher, when you're doing your media reviews and you sort of see, oh, that book sounds neat. Oh, that book sounds neat. Oh, I'm going to put this on my list. I'm going to put this on my list. So I've just been putting it on my list, and then I'll go back and think, oh, I should read that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I just got into audiobooks because I love them for when I'm walking the dog. And so then I'll have my audiobook on the go.
All right.
But I try to hit all the different formats that you can for a book. And then one of our favorite podcasts, so Catherine and I share some podcasts that we enjoy, which is called Realms Unknown, which is by comedian Alice Fraser. Every week, it's a speculative fiction podcast. And so there's just this deep list of books recommended by people, and they all sound so good.
Yeah.
I will never get through this list. And that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. It should always be something more, and just stay curious and stay, always find something new.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love reading as well. And as you mentioned at the beginning of your answer, Sarah, talking about you can develop more empathy and learn about different perspectives and people. I shared a quote with you both in the questionnaire ahead of time. It's a quote from the poet Emily Dickinson, who once remarked, quote, "There is no frigate like a book to take us lands away. How frugal is the chariot that bears the human soul." And I love that sentiment, and even the visual of it. There's no frigate like a book. And if I can nerd out for a moment, as you were talking, Sarah, I was pulling up a Microsoft Excel document. My apologies for people who just listen to the podcast. What I'm showing right now is my lifelong list of every book I've ever read.
And 696, I love it.
And it's broken out by year, and then I have some very rudimentary analysis over on the right-hand side, like how many books per year, what's the average books I read per year. The book I'm currently reading, this may be kind of cryptic. It will be, by my recollection, the 666th book I've read in my life, which as growing up Catholic like I did, that number has particular not great resonance. So I'm going to quickly read that book so I can read book 667 and put them both in here. And yeah, I just really enjoy doing this just for my own benefit, to see, what do I typically gravitate to, what books speak to me, what authors speak to me as well. I don't know if you have something similar.
You're such a researcher.
I do. Mine is not quite as sophisticated. There was a time that I did have it in a Microsoft Access database. I gave that up because I could not. I lost the amount, the time I wanted to maintain it. So now it's just a Word doc, and I'll just jot down. Here's the title. Here's the author. Was it an audiobook? Did I finish it? Because I have been giving myself the gift that if I am not enjoying a book, I do not finish it anymore. There was a time that I finished all my books, and I don't do that anymore. There's just too many books, not enough time.
Yes.
And if anyone's looking for an alternative to Goodreads, I've been using Storygraph, the app, and that to track my books. You can import, if you've been using Goodreads, you can import a list, you can import an Excel document. I find it pretty great for tracking because especially as I hit my mid-40s, I'm having trouble recollecting titles and authors. If I don't write it down, I will forget it. And there is so much wonderful stuff to read. So
That's great.
yeah, recommend that.
That's Storygraph, you said, Catherine?
Storygraph. And you can add in some of the popular reading challenges if you do those things. So I try to participate every year in the Agatha Christie reading challenge because there's always something to reread in that group. And they have those challenges loaded so you can kind of track what you have to read.
So cool. I love that our conversation went in these directions. This is really fun.
I maintain that prospect researchers are interesting people because they are interested in other things and curious, and we can always find good things to talk about. At the very least, you get a good book recommendation.
If nothing else.
And the recommendation to go see the night sky in Algeria, Catherine.
Yes.
There you go. I'll report back when I get to there.
Well, Sarah and Katherine, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a real delight, both to hear about your book From the Ground Up, Prospect Research for Nonprofits, and this latter segment of the conversation, getting to know you both a little bit as people as well. And again, I wish you the best with this book. I know that it'll be a really important addition, contribution to our industry. It's sorely needed. And as more people become familiar with nonprofit work, I love that it's geared to people entering the field and people that have some exposure to prospect research, but definitely want to learn and apply more. So thank you both for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much
Tim.
for having us. This is wonderful.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
And for our audience, you'll be able to find Sarah Marcotte and Katherine Scott's conversation in late March 2026 across the various platforms you're accustomed to finding these weekly interviews. LinkedIn, which will have the audio video component on YouTube, Podbean for people that like to listen. And thanks to my 100th guest, Luis Diaz in Pennsylvania. He is affiliated with WISE and the Donor Participation Project. And for over a year, he's been sponsoring my website. So thank you, Luis. You'll find the conversation at peopleandfundraising.wordifysites.com. Have a great start to your weekend, Sarah and Katherine, and I look forward to cheering you on more.
Thank you.
Thank you.